If there's one thing that the religious never have, it's evidence. They like to play make-believe, but evidence is that which points directly to a particular conclusion, and they can't find any that actually shows that their gods are real. And that's kind of sad, isn't it? We don't really do a lot of Frank Turek anymore, not because he doesn't produce a ton of videos, but because he's a complete waste of everyone's time. He is the ultimate shyster, and even I get tired of his lies. However, every once in a while, I'll run across a video that I think might be entertaining, and that's what we're going to do today. If you see anything else that you think might be worth doing, please let me know down in the comments, provide a direct link to the video, and I'll take a look. So anyway, without further ado, let's get to it, shall we?
Most of the time, evidence isn't the issue for people.
I'll agree, but not in the way that I'm sure Frank wants. For the religious, evidence is irrelevant because they don't really care if their beliefs are actually true. They just want to feel good, and if swallowing a complete load of theological horseshit does that, then they'll do it in a heartbeat. Evidence does matter, though, to rational people. I care a lot about the evidence, which is why I reject the claims of the religious most of the time. You need to be able to support your claims with something objectively justifiable, and they simply can't do it. So I guess Frank is half right. We'll go with that. It's just not going to get him where he wants to go.
They don't want Christianity to be true.
You're right. I don't want Christianity to be true. I also don't not want Christianity to be true. I just want to know what the truth is, regardless of any potential consequences. That's something that a lot of people, particularly the religious, they simply can't understand. They expect everyone to be just like they are, and we're not. Just watch a lot of religious videos, which sadly I have to do, where they say that people ought to be actively seeking out their God. Not a God, their God specifically. Unless that's you, they have no interest in talking to you at all because you are not a potential cult member that could benefit them with just the right push. See, I'm not looking for a God. I'm looking for the truth, and if a God happens to be real, demonstrably real, then that's the truth and I will accept it for what it is. But that's not what they're looking for. They just want to enlarge the cult so they can get paid. Let's be honest, that's all Frank is in it for.
Because they don't want to give up their autonomy to a God who is in control.
And here we see yet another major misconception that apologists have. They can't separate, I believe this thing is real, from I'm going to bow down to it and wrap my entire life around it. Those are two entirely different things, and the religious have had it explained to them many, many times, and they simply don't care. They're not after truth. They are after comfort. They want everyone to kiss their God's ass. They are not concerned necessarily if their God is real, though. They believe it, but believing it doesn't make it true. Lots of people believe really absurdly ridiculous things. Oh, but my belief is true. Great. How do you know that? Better yet, how do you demonstrate that to others? That's where religion completely falls down, and they don't care because it gets them where they want to go, not where the real world actually is. And that's kind of pathetic, right?
They want to be God. They want to be God over their own lives. So sometimes just asking the question can help clear the decks of any objections and not only help you understand where the person is coming from, but it can help them understand when they have to admit that they're really not in it to discover what is true. They want to believe what they want to believe.
Looking in the mirror again, right, Frank? because you really find that they spend far more time describing themselves than they do anyone else, because they want everyone to be just like they are. They can't understand that people are their own individuals, that they have their own views and interests that do not necessarily mirror those of the believer. And because everyone else has to be just like they are, they feel confident that they can speak for everyone else, which just ends up making them look like a bunch of idiots, because that's what they actually are. This happens all the time. Just look at theists who show up in the comments on the videos here. They don't tend to last very long, do they? There are a couple who stick around for a while, but mostly it's a hit and run thing where they realize that they're not getting the traction that they really want and decide to move on to greener pastures. They have an image in their heads of what atheists are really like, and we're just not that way, at least by and large. I can't speak for anyone but myself, but most of us that I run into, we're not like that. They will confidently spout a load of religious nonsense, and the second that anyone disagrees, they have two options. State it again, even more confidently, but with no evidence to back any of it up, or run away. And most of them choose to run. It won't shake their faith that they lost, because they just reframe it in their minds as a decisive victory, because they can't possibly be wrong. Just ask them. This is a massive problem for the religious. They have no grasp on reality whatsoever.
And so I think this is a very important video to wake people up. Always ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? If the person hesitates or says no, evidence isn't their problem. They are their problem.
Nope. It's your crap expectations that are the problem. I already explained it, but to be fair, really, what else can Frank say? He wants more Christians so he can sell more books and sell more tickets to his talks and things like that. Atheists don't tend to go. At least I never would. I'm not that stupid, but I guess there are people out there who are curious and want to sit in the audience and chuckle to themselves internally. Because this isn't about showing that his imaginary friend is actually real. It's about padding his own bank account. Therefore, he has to lump those two questions together and pretend that anyone who doesn't hit their knees and become a fanatic, those people aren't really interested in the truth. But that is simply not true. Frank is the one that doesn't care about the truth. Also, if is not now, nor will it ever be because. They tend to ask a lot of hypothetical questions, don't they? I don't care if Christianity is true. I care when you can demonstrate that it actually is. When do you think you're going to prove that, Frank? Never? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I don't buy it. We've watched Frank desperately try to spin the narratives in dozens, hell, probably close to 100 videos by now, and he never ever does it. Frank is not an honest interlocutor. He's a fanatic and a scam artist dedicated to feathering his own nest and not to finding actual truth. Faith is never a reliable path to truth. It just isn't. You can't just believe your way to reality. But that's what people like Frank want. Too bad. That's why I always say that you need to get yourself out of the way of the actual evidence and examine it without being in your own head. It doesn't matter what you want to be true. It doesn't matter what's emotionally comforting. It matters only what you can independently demonstrate is so, entirely separately from your own emotional wishes and dreams. You don't matter in this equation. No one does. Yet the religious are incapable of doing that. I wonder why.
The one question I ask people who are not Christians is this: if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?
Ask me again when you prove that Christianity is actually true. Because he's not even trying to do that, is he? As I've said before, that's two entirely separate questions. If Christianity were true, well, how do you get there? We examine the evidence, of course, compared to the claims that Christianity makes. If the evidence supports the claims of Christianity, then sure, we can presume for the moment that Christianity is true. And that has not happened. In fact, the evidence that we have shows clearly that Christianity is not true. There's no evidence whatsoever for the magical man god. The Bible is a load of laughable mythology, and every single supernatural claim that the religion relies on, well, that's all ridiculously unsupportable. So the first question fails completely. If is not because, never has been and never will be. Christianity does not seem to be true. It doesn't matter what you want, it matters only what you can support independently, and sadly, the religious can't honestly support anything. The second question, would you become a Christian, depends entirely on the first question being found to be true, and since it's not, no. No, I would not. We could turn this back on Frank, though. If Scientology were true, would he become a Scientologist? And you can substitute any religion in the world in there because it doesn't really matter. And Frank would say no because he isn't emotionally attached to those other religions. Well, I'm not emotionally attached to his. I don't get emotionally attached to ideas. I want to see the actual evidence that shows that those ideas are factually true in the real world. And people like Frank, they can't produce any. They just make excuses, which is all he's doing right here. And that's not really a surprise, is it?
I've had atheists stand at microphones in front of hundreds of people on college campuses. I ask them that question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And they say no. And I go, no!
Because you don't understand the circumstances and you don't give anyone a chance to explain. I just did. Of course, Frank can't honestly address any of that. He just really likes the idea, but liking an idea, that doesn't make the idea true. It just makes you delusional. You need to establish the idea as true, supported by evidence, and Frank can't do that. He's just emotionally attached, and I'm not. I am nothing at all like Frank, which I think is a very good thing because I think Frank is an idiot. This is why having discussions with theists, where the theist is in control of the microphone, that is really a bad idea. Because they can cut you off anytime they want if your answers get uncomfortable. And for people who are like putting it up on YouTube, Frank can pick and choose the stuff that makes him look good and just not post the stuff that doesn't. And I think that happens a lot. Whereas I approve almost all comments without exception on my channel, unless you're being a racist asshole or something, or a troll, and I honestly engage all comers. That's why I often will look into the comments on religious videos and point out that the religious don't engage their detractors. I do. They don't, at least most of the time. Why? Because religion is now and always has been top down. It's preaching to the choir. The apologist or the preacher, whoever it is, they are in charge and are a self-proclaimed authority, and you've got to listen and not get uppity. That's not how honest, rational conversations happen. But for people like Frank, they're not really interested in honest, rational conversations, are they?
How's that reasonable? How's that rational? It's not. The problem isn't here, the problem's here. They don't want it to be true.
Now, this is just a point, but your heart does nothing but pump blood. It doesn't make decisions. It is not the seat of your emotions. If you honestly think any of that is true of your heart, you need to seek professional mental help. The religious pull this kind of stuff all the time, though, don't they? Granted, most of them, I think, are just being poetic. They are talking down to their audience, and I don't do that. Tons of people who watch my videos are a whole lot smarter than I am, and I learn things from commenters on my videos all the time. I doubt you could get Frank to admit that he does that too, though, right? Because he's got an ego, and I don't. And a lot of people really get mad and say, well, of course you have an ego. But I really don't. I only care about finding the best approximation of truth that I can. And he, he's just passing around the collection plate because this whole shtick is taking advantage of the religiously gullible. He is talking down to people. Listen and believe. Give me a good evidence-based reason to take anything that you say seriously. And he can't do that, can he? He won't even try.
They don't want there to be a God. Why? Because they want to be God. They want to be God of their own lives.
That's ridiculous. This is all being said without asking any actual atheists if it's true. It's an assertion because Frank likes where he can just claim it leads him, but he doesn't care if it's actually true. I am a piss-poor god of my own life because I am not in control of a lot of things. The recent fires in Hollywood prove that. How did really wanting the fire to go out work for anybody who lived there? Not so well. If I get cancer, how am I in control of my own life? Hell, I'm diabetic. It's kind of a pain in the ass. But I can't just wish it away into the cornfield. That is not how reality works. Nobody is in control of everything. That's really why a lot of theists believe in their imaginary friends in the first place, because they desperately want somebody to be in control. But it simply isn't true. You exist in an uncaring world. You're just an animal dealing with your environment as best as you can. It doesn't matter if you like that fact, because it is a fact. Learn to deal with it. At least try.
They have a moral objection to God. In fact, one famous atheist, Thomas Nagel, said, "I have a cosmic authority problem. I don't want there to be a God."
Good for him. I'm not him. I neither want nor do I not want there to be a God because my wants are irrelevant to reality. There is what there is. I just want to understand what there is to the best of my ability to currently find out. Frank is just projecting. He's taking what Nagel said and insisting that it applies to all atheists everywhere, and he's just wrong. Not that he cares at all, because he's just out to convince the already faithful to throw more money in the collection plate so he can buy something. I don't know what he buys. I don't know if he has a jet. I don't think it really matters. He's not talking to us. He's talking about us, at least his own straw man version of us, because he doesn't care about the actual truth. It's not as easy to manipulate actual truth as it is to just lie to people who are desperate to believe what he wants them to believe. That's not a good way to go through life, is it?
See, most of us, we're not on a truth quest, we're on a happiness quest.
That's your side. I'm on a truth quest. That's why I am not going to embrace anything which hasn't been evidentially demonstrated. It's funny just how much these people project, isn't it? I've been making that point forever. So many of these people are demonstrably doing the very same things that they are criticizing in others because they are just too blinded to reality to know what's actually going on. If you're doing it too, you're just a hypocrite, and there's an awful lot of hypocrites out there, aren't there? If you're going to say, don't do that, when you're the only one actually doing it, then you've got problems. That's why these people can't step back and examine their positions intelligently. I don't think they like what they find if they did, and that's a them problem, isn't it?
And we're just going to believe whatever we think's going to make us happy.
Which is exactly what Frank is doing, or at the very least what Frank is encouraging, because I honestly don't know if Frank actually believes any of this stuff or not. Considering how many times he's been corrected on his ridiculous beliefs and then just kept spouting the same thing anyhow, I'd lean toward him being a complete con man. Now, I don't know what's going on in his head, but that's what the evidence seems to suggest to me. And that goes for most apologists out there. It sure looks like they care more about the profit than they do about the beliefs, at least to me. Tell me what you think down in the comments, though, because I'd really love to know.
Here's the problem. You can make yourself happy over the short term, doing a lot of fun but ultimately destructive things, yet over the long term, it's a disaster.
And everyone watching this video who's over 40 knows what I'm talking about, because most of us have tried it.
But I'm not doing that. I've had the religious try that one on me too, but I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't sleep around, I don't do anything destructive, and I never have. I've always been rational about this stuff. When I was young, I drank socially, I guess. I'd go to a party and have a wine cooler because I knew I'd have to drive home and I didn't want to die or kill somebody else. Then I realized that I really didn't care for the taste of alcohol, so I just stopped drinking altogether. I haven't had alcohol in probably 20 years, maybe more. It's not that I can't have it. It's not that I medically am not allowed or something. I just don't want it. And the same goes for all the rest. Zero interest. I am perfectly happy drinking water, which is mostly what I drink. I eat reasonably healthy because I need to. I don't speed much, only going with the flow of traffic. I use my damn turn signals. I wear a seatbelt, not because I have to, because it's stupid not to. I never really went through a rebellious phase. So Frank has nothing on me. Not that he's talking to me or anything, because Frank is just a con man.
The only way to get true contentment and happiness is to go straight through truth, and Jesus is the truth.
That's your claim, but that's all it is. This is where he's completely falling apart because he's into religious assertion territory that he can't show is actually true. Not that he cares because he doesn't. This is why I don't take him seriously. He can't tell the difference between religious comfort and actual fact. Where is your evidence that Jesus is the truth? I'll settle for evidence that Jesus existed at all, and we all know he can't provide that. Because we're right back to if is not because, right? If Jesus was real, go ahead and show that, I'll wait, but I don't think you can do it. Because you need to show that Jesus ever existed at all, something for which you have no corroboration. And then, once you've done that, you have to show that Jesus was the son of a real existing God, which you can't prove either. That's why faith is such a waste of time, because faith doesn't demonstrably get you anywhere. It's just a long line of empty assertions spouted because he really likes the idea. This is why Frank is such an idiot. He can't show that he has any idea what truth actually is. Because he doesn't care, does he?
So, ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? If the person says yes, then get them some evidence. If they hesitate or say no, the problem isn't here, the problem's here. Just stay in their lives, pray for them, and love them, and maybe there'll be an opportunity in the future.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be able to convince me of that with evidence, because it's the evidence that matters. Because I know more about it than Frank does, obviously. It's kind of hard to know less. That's another problem with the religious, if you notice. They don't seem to know a lot, do they? They believe a lot, but they have very little actual defensible knowledge, and certainly no evidence at all. Ask them for evidence for their God, and they won't have any. They'll give you arguments, which is not evidence. It's just claims. And claims are not evidence. Claims are just assertions that need to be backed up with evidence, but they have no evidence to present, so what difference does it make? This is where we get right back to, it sounds good to me theology. But who cares about you? You are irrelevant to what is actually going on in the real world. That's capital T truth. Stuff that is actually going on. Stuff that is demonstrably going on. That's what I want to know, at least to the best of my current ability to find out. People like Frank, they don't care about it at all. They just want to feel good and make a buck. And that's not really something to be proud of, is it? After that, he just goes into self-promotion, and we're going to skip over all that. I am not going to give you any money, Frank, so you can just go fuck off. This is why people like Frank continuously fail, because they are not after truth. They say they are, but their actions clearly show otherwise. They're after comfort and cash, not fact. And I only care about the facts. I don't give a crap about the rest. As I've said before, if the world was going to end tomorrow, if there was a massive asteroid inbound or something like that that was going to wipe out all life on the planet, I'd want to know. Is there anything I can do about it? Probably not, but I'd still want to know. I don't want to revel in ignorance like Frank does. As far as I'm concerned, ignorance isn't bliss. I want to understand as many true things and reject as many false things as I can. And most importantly, I want to know how to tell the difference between the two. How I feel about any of it is completely irrelevant to the truth. The truth doesn't care about my fifis, and it sure the hell doesn't care about yours either. This is just Frank being Frank, the same old con man idiot that we've grown to detest. This is what religion does to people. In fact, it's often people like Frank who do it to other believers. It's what makes Christianity such a shit show, because people like Frank are willing to lie to others for a buck, and even if he does believe it himself, which who knows if he actually does or not, he's not out there looking to validate his own beliefs with evidence like I did. I sought out the truth, and Christianity wasn't it. I cared enough to go out and do that, and Frank clearly doesn't. Most theists don't, or they wouldn't remain theists for long. And that, my friends, would be a really, really good thing if they could actually care about reality and put in the work to determine if their beliefs are actually true. Because they can't even ask that question, because these people are deluded out of their minds. Because I've done that, and their beliefs don't stand up to any kind of rational critical scrutiny. They certainly have no evidence in support. Not that they care or anything, because let's be honest, these people are just dumb.